The moment the lights go off, your brain suddenly starts writing stories. Conversations that never happened, arguments you always win, a version of tomorrow where everything goes right, a relationship that doesn't exist, playing out in perfect detail. Entire lives built from nothing, running behind your closed eyes. It feels random, like your mind is simply misbehaving, refusing to shut down when you need it to most. But psychology says none of this is random. There's a reason this happens to almost everyone, every single night. A reason rooted in how your brain processes emotion, rehearses the future, and quietly tries to finish what your day left incomplete. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly why your mind does this and what it's actually trying to accomplish while you lie there, wide awake, watching stories your own brain refuses to stop telling. Why the brain becomes active before sleep. Here's the part that surprises most people. Your brain doesn't slow down when you close your eyes. In many ways, it speeds up. During the day, your attention is pulled outward. Emails, conversations, traffic, deadlines. Your brain is mostly reacting to the world in front of you. But the second external stimulation drops away, something shifts. With no more incoming demands, your brain doesn't go quiet. It turns inward. Neuroscientists have found that certain brain regions actually increase in activity during this exact transition, the quiet window between wakefulness and sleep, sometimes called the hypnagogic state. Think of your mind like a busy office. All day, phone calls, meetings, and interruptions keep everyone occupied with immediate tasks. The moment the phones stop ringing, the staff doesn't leave. They finally get to open the folder marked unfinished business that's been piling up since morning. Your brain does something remarkably similar, and there's a specific, well-documented network responsible for opening that folder. It's called the default mode network, a set of connected brain regions that activate specifically when you're not focused on an external task. For years, scientists assumed the brain went quiet during idle moments. Then brain imaging revealed the opposite. This network lights up dramatically during daydreaming, self-reflection, and yes, the minutes before sleep. The default mode network handles some of your most personal mental work, thinking about yourself, replaying memories, imagining future scenarios, and making sense of your own identity. This is fundamentally different from focused, task-based thinking. It's less like solving a math problem, and more like your mind wandering freely through a private gallery of memories, worries, and possibilities. Researchers have found this network becomes especially active right before sleep, precisely when external distractions disappear and internal processing takes over completely. This is why bedtime often feels like the loudest time of day for your thoughts, even though the room itself has never been quieter. Consider how strange this actually is. You spend all day surrounded by noise, people, and demands, and feel relatively calm. Then you lie down in total silence, and your mind suddenly feels crowded. That's not a coincidence. It's the default mode network finally getting uninterrupted access to your attention after being pushed aside for 16 hours straight. But that's only part of the story, because this network isn't just wandering aimlessly, it's working through something specific. Not all memories are treated equally by your brain. Emotionally charged moments, an argument, an embarrassing mistake, an achievement you're proud of, get flagged differently than neutral ones, like what you had for lunch on a random Tuesday. Psychologists call this emotional processing, the mental work of making sense of a feeling, not just the event that caused it. During the day, you're usually too busy to fully process emotional moments as they happen. A tense meeting ends, and you're immediately pulled into the next task. The feeling gets pushed aside, unresolved. At night, with nothing left to distract you, that unresolved feeling finally gets its turn. This is why an argument from 3 days ago can suddenly resurface at 11 at night, replaying in vivid detail, complete with a better comeback you didn't think of in the moment. Your brain isn't torturing you. It's attempting something psychologists consider genuinely useful, working through unresolved emotional material while your conscious mind finally has room to focus on it. However, your brain is doing something even stranger than simply replaying the past. It's not just old memories that show up at night. Entire imagined futures do too. A conversation that hasn't happened yet, a job interview weeks away, an argument you're preparing for, just in case. This is called mental simulation, your brain's ability to construct detailed, imagined scenarios of events that haven't occurred. Neuroscientists studying this phenomenon have connected it to predictive brain theory, a leading model suggesting your brain isn't simply reacting to the world as it happens. It's constantly predicting what's likely to happen next based on past experience and quietly preparing you for it. In this view, your brain isn't malfunctioning by imagining a future argument. It's rehearsing, practicing responses, testing outcomes before they're needed in real life. Athletes and performers use a deliberate version of this called cognitive rehearsal, mentally practicing a performance before physically doing it, which research shows can meaningfully improve real-world execution. Your brain, lying in the dark, may be doing an unconscious, unfiltered version of the exact same thing, running simulations of tomorrow's meeting, next week's difficult conversation, or a future version of your life that hasn't happened yet. Think about the last time you had something important the next day, a presentation, a first date, a hard conversation you'd been avoiding. Chances are your brain didn't wait for morning to start preparing. It ran the scenario the night before, sometimes several different versions of it, each with a slightly different outcome. That's predictive brain theory in action, quietly rehearsing reality before reality actually arrives. But some of these late-night simulations aren't about the future at all. Some are stuck entirely in something that never got properly closed. Ever replay an argument in your head days after it happened, saying everything you wish you'd said the first time? There's a name for why this happens so persistently. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect, discovered by a psychologist who noticed something unusual. People remembered unfinished tasks far more vividly than completed ones. An open loop, a task, thought, or emotional exchange that feels incomplete, stays active in memory. A closed loop fades quickly. An unresolved argument is the ultimate open loop. No clean ending, no sense of closure, just a conversation that stopped without actually finishing. Your brain treats this unresolved tension almost like an unclosed browser tab, quietly running in the background, consuming attention even when you're focused on something else entirely. At night, with nothing else competing for that attention, the tab finally gets pulled to the front of the screen. This is why the same argument can replay for days, each version slightly different. Your brain testing new responses, new outcomes, searching for the version that finally feels resolved. But there's an even deeper reason your mind keeps returning to certain scenarios, one connected to something you might not even be consciously aware you're missing. Sometimes the fantasies your brain builds at night aren't about anything that actually happened. They're entirely invented, a perfect conversation, an ideal relationship, a version of your life where everything finally goes right. Psychologists suggest these imagined scenarios often point toward unmet emotional needs, things like recognition, connection, or reassurance that aren't being fully satisfied in daily life. If you're not receiving enough appreciation at work, your mind might quietly construct a scenario where your effort is finally fully recognized. If a relationship feels emotionally distant, your mind might build a version where that same person finally says exactly what you've been needing to hear. This isn't weakness or delusion. It's a form of self-reflection, your brain using imagination to identify a gap between what you have and what you actually need. In a strange way, these fantasies function like a mirror, not because they're accurate predictions of the future, but because of what they quietly reveal about the present. This is why the same imagined scene can return night after night with small variations, but the same emotional core. The setting changes, the people change, but the underlying need, to feel heard, valued, or secure, stays exactly the same, resurfacing until it's actually addressed in waking life. But there's a much more surprising reason your brain builds imaginary worlds at night, one connected directly to how it consolidates memory itself. Here's something few people realize. The same mental process responsible for bedtime overthinking is also responsible for creativity. Mind wandering, the technical term for your thoughts drifting without a specific external focus, has been consistently linked in research to increased creative problem solving. This is because mind wandering allows your brain to combine unrelated pieces of information in ways focused, linear thinking usually doesn't allow. A memory from years ago connects unexpectedly with a current problem. A random image sparks an idea you weren't consciously looking for. This also plays a role in memory. Consolidation, the process by which your brain strengthens and organizes information from the day, partly by connecting it to existing memories and imagined possibilities. Writers have long described their best ideas arriving right before sleep. This isn't poetic exaggeration. It's the default mode network doing exactly what it's built to do, wandering freely, without the constraints of focused daytime thinking. In this light, Bedtime fantasies aren't purely a distraction from sleep. They're sometimes the exact mental process responsible for your most original thinking. However, there's a point where this same process stops being helpful and starts working against you. Not all bedtime mental activity is beneficial. There's an important difference between healthy emotional processing and something psychologists describe as rumination, repetitive, negative thought patterns that loop without resolution. Occasional imagined scenarios, even emotionally charged ones, are a normal part of how your brain processes daily experience. But when the same negative scenario replays night after night without ever settling or resolving, research links this pattern to increased anxiety and significantly worse sleep quality. The difference often comes down to direction. Healthy processing tends to move, exploring a feeling, considering different outcomes, eventually settling somewhere. Unhealthy rumination stays stuck. The same worry, the same imagined argument, playing on a loop with no real movement or resolution. If bedtime fantasies consistently leave you feeling more anxious rather than more settled, that's usually a signal the process has shifted from healthy reflection into something that needs a different kind of attention. There's also a physiological piece to this. Repeated rumination keeps stress-related activity elevated in the body, which works directly against the physical relaxation your brain needs to descend into deep sleep. In other words, the loop doesn't just feel unpleasant, it can measurably interfere with the quality of rest you get afterward. But there's a clear, well-supported way to work with this pattern, rather than fighting against it. How to control bedtime overthinking. The good news is that this mental habit responds well to a few specific strategies. First, externalize unfinished thoughts before bed. Writing down an unresolved worry, even briefly, has been shown to reduce the mental looping associated with the Zeigarnik Effect, essentially giving your brain a signal that the open loop has been acknowledged. Second, schedule deliberate reflection earlier in the evening. Giving your brain planned time to process the day's emotional material reduces the pressure for it to happen involuntarily right at bedtime. Third, if a scenario keeps repeating, ask what it might be pointing toward. Rather than dismissing it, treat it as information, a signal about an unmet need, an unresolved conversation, or a genuine future concern worth addressing directly. Fourth, practice mentally closing recurring loops. If an argument keeps replaying, consciously imagine a resolved ending, rather than letting it loop indefinitely without conclusion. None of these require eliminating imagination altogether. That's neither possible nor necessary. They simply help redirect a completely natural process towards something more settled, rather than something that keeps you awake. Over time, many people notice the same scenarios stop returning entirely, once the underlying need behind them has actually been addressed, proof that the loop was never random to begin with. The stories your brain creates before sleep aren't always trying to fool you. Sometimes they're trying to understand you, replaying what wasn't finished, rehearsing what hasn't happened yet, and quietly pointing toward what you actually need, even when you haven't said it out loud. Your mind isn't malfunctioning in the dark. It's finally getting. If you've ever wondered what actually happens during the dreams that follow, what your brain is doing while you're fully unconscious, that's exactly what we're exploring.